Right now, the entertainment library you carry in your pocket is larger than everything ever owned by every king, emperor, and pharaoh in human history combined. And yet, somehow, you still get bored. Ancient humans had none of that. No smartphones, no YouTube, not even Netflix to keep them binge watching until 3 in the morning. So there is one question almost nobody ever thinks to ask. What did our ancestors do when they got bored? Let's travel back in time, 100,000, maybe even 200,000 years ago, to a world with no writing, no art, no music, and no language shaped the way we know it today. Just human beings, sitting there, empty and nothing to do. But what happened inside that strange, empty space would eventually change everything you thought you knew about creativity, religion, and why your brain works the way it does right now. But first, did boredom even exist back then? That question is actually part of a serious scientific debate, and the answer has surprised almost everyone. Even the researchers who spent their entire careers searching for it. For a long time, researchers believed our earliest ancestors were completely consumed by the struggle to survive. So busy staying alive that boredom simply never had a chance to exist. Every waking hour was spent hunting, gathering, and building shelter. There was no room for leisure. But that assumption turned out to be wrong. Very wrong. In 1966, anthropologist Marshall Solins published groundbreaking findings after years of studying the Kungsan people of the Kalahari Desert. Their way of life had remained remarkably similar to how humans lived 100,000 years ago. What he discovered completely overturned decades of conventional thinking. They worked an average of just 15 to 20 hours a week. A week. Not a day. An entire week. The rest of their time was spent resting, gathering together, talking, and simply watching the world around them. Solins called them the original affluent society. Their wealth did not come from money or possessions. It came from time. They enjoyed a level of freedom and leisure that most people living in the modern world today will probably never experience. Stop for a moment and think about that. You have a dishwasher, a washing machine, food delivery, a car, and a supercomputer sitting in your pocket. They had none of those things. Yet somehow they were richer in free time than we are. Here is the truth almost nobody tells you. Modern life has not given us more time. In many ways, it has taken it away. Every new convenience quietly comes with another obligation, another task, another expectation to become even more efficient. We have become the first generation in human history that actually has to schedule our relaxation on a calendar app. Ancient humans, meanwhile, spent countless hours surrounded by genuine silence. And inside that vast emptiness, something extraordinary happened. Something that would eventually shape the very person you are today. The oldest piece of art ever discovered on Earth was not created for survival, nor was it made for religion. Archaeologists believe it may have existed for one simple reason: someone had an unusually quiet afternoon and nothing more urgent to do. That artwork is 75,000 years old, and the story behind it may completely change the way you think about the origins of human creativity. In 2010, archaeologist Francesco D'Erico and his colleagues examined a collection of seashells discovered inside Blombos Cave in South Africa. The shells were 75,000 years old. What made them extraordinary was that every single one had been carefully drilled with a tiny hole and coated with a beautiful layer of red ochre. Think about what that really means. Drilling a tiny hole through a seashell using nothing but crude stone tools would have taken hours, perhaps even an entire day. The person who created those remarkable beads had no electricity, no metal tools, and certainly no music playing in the background. All they had was the cold wall of a cave, a simple stone, and a long, quiet afternoon with nowhere else to be. Survival alone does not invent art, boredom does. The same pattern appears in music. In 2008, researchers excavating a cave in southern Germany uncovered a flute carved from the wing bone of a vulture, complete with 4 carefully crafted finger holes. 40,000 years ago, long before agriculture, long before the first cities, and long before any civilization we recognize today, someone picked up a bird bone and created music. Not because they had to, but because they had a quiet afternoon and a curious mind. Neuroscientist Daniel Levitin, who has spent much of his career studying the origins of music, argues that our ability to perceive music may be even older than language itself. The human brain was wired to recognize rhythm and melody long before it could form complex sentences. Rhythm is, at its core, pattern recognition, and that ability helped our ancestors survive in a dangerous world. But boredom gave us far more than art or music. It shaped something even more powerful. It gave birth to human imagination. Think about what boredom actually requires. To feel bored, you first need a sense of time. You have to recognize that the present moment has gone on for too long, that something else could be happening instead, and that a different future is possible. Perhaps even a better one. In that sense, boredom may have been the first sign that the human brain had evolved enough to imagine things that did not yet exist. A dog waiting patiently for its owner is not bored. It is simply waiting. It cannot imagine a more interesting alternative, but imagine a human sitting in a cave 100,000 years ago, staring into a flickering fire with nothing demanding their attention. Their mind begins to wander. What if tomorrow's hunt fails? What lies beyond that distant mountain? What happens after we die? Every question religion has ever asked, every idea philosophy has wrestled with, and every mystery science is still trying to answer today may all trace back to the same moment. A moment when someone had nothing to do and simply allowed their mind to wander into places no one had ever been before. In 2013, psychologist Sandy Mann demonstrated this idea in the laboratory. She asked volunteers to complete an incredibly boring task by copying numbers from a phone book by hand. Immediately afterward, they took a creativity test. The results were striking. The participants who had just experienced boredom dramatically outperformed everyone else. Not by a little, but by a remarkable margin. Because when the brain is forced to confront boredom, it begins creating its own stimulation. And once it is finally set free, the human mind becomes capable of extraordinary things. Yet ancient humans created something during those quiet moments that was even greater than art. Music and religion combined. Most people have never heard this theory, but it may explain the single most important reason you are able to understand every word I'm saying right now. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar spent years trying to answer what seemed like a surprisingly simple question. What do human beings actually talk about when they are not discussing matters of life and death? His answer was astonishing. Around 65% of all human conversations are, at their core, simply gossip. Who did what? Who said what to whom? What happened to someone? Both people happen to know. At first glance, that sounds like a complete waste of time. In reality, it is anything but. Dunbar argued that language did not evolve simply to exchange useful facts. It evolved to weave the social bonds that hold human groups together. Before language, our primate ancestors strengthened relationships by grooming one another. But grooming only works one-on-one. An individual can groom only one companion at a time, never an entire group. Language became the perfect replacement for grooming. Suddenly, by sitting around a campfire, you could connect with 10 people at once. You could tell stories about someone who was not even there. Build trust with people you had never physically touched. And hold together a tribe of 150 individuals using nothing more than words. Language was not born because we needed to coordinate a hunt. It flourished because people sat together with nothing pressing to do and began telling stories. Boredom gave birth to gossip. Gossip shaped language. And language laid the first stones of civilization. It is one of the most remarkable chains of cause and effect in human history. If boredom became the foundation for so many of humanity's greatest achievements, what happens when we erase it completely from our lives? Neuroscience offers an answer that may be very different from what you expect. In fact, it may finally give a name to a strange feeling that has been quietly living inside you all along, something you have always sensed but never quite knew how to describe. Deep inside your brain is a network of interconnected regions known as the default mode network. Neuroscientists discovered it almost by accident during brain scans, after noticing something unexpected. Whenever people were asked to relax, close their eyes, and do absolutely nothing, a specific network of brain regions suddenly lit up with extraordinary activity. This network is deeply involved in creativity, self-reflection, empathy, problem-solving, and imagining possible futures. Your brain is not resting when you appear to be doing nothing. In fact, it shifts into one of its most sophisticated modes of operation. But there is one catch. This network only comes online when you stop consuming information. In other words, when you truly experience boredom and allow your mind to wander without a destination. And that is where the real problem begins. Studies suggest that the average American checks their phone around 2,600 times a day. The moment even the slightest feeling of restlessness or emptiness appears, we instinctively reach for our phones and shut down that default network before it ever has the chance to do what it was designed to do. A prehistoric human sitting inside a dark cave, staring into a flickering fire and wondering what comes after death, was not wasting time. Their wandering mind was performing one of the most remarkable tasks a human brain is capable of. It was creating meaning from nothing. For 300,000 years, our species learned to fill silence with meaning. Then we invented a device designed to make sure silence never has a chance to exist again. We carry it everywhere, even into the bathroom. The average American now spends more than 4 hours every day looking at a screen, more time than many of our ancient ancestors spent working in an entire week. We traded away the very condition that helped build human civilization for an endless stream of content that never truly ends. 75,000 years ago, someone with nothing pressing to do sat down and carefully strung together a necklace of shell beads. 40,000 years ago, someone else carved a flute from a bird bone. And somewhere between those two moments, people gathered around a fire with no urgent task before them and began whispering questions that had no answers. They wondered about death. They wondered about the sky. They wondered why the universe worked the way it did. Some of those questions eventually became religion, others became science. Others found their way into melodies that refuse to leave your mind, conversations that change the course of a life, or a single idea that keeps you awake long. Every one of those extraordinary things was born from an empty afternoon and a mind with nowhere else to go. So the next time boredom finds you, before your hand reaches for your phone without even thinking, try doing what your ancestors did almost every single day. Just sit there for 5 minutes and see what your brain creates when you finally give it the silence it has been waiting for all along. You may be surprised by what appears, because in the end, that is how every great human story has ever begun.